MBA hopefuls, we are on air with MBA Waves, your weekly cast talking all things business and education. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more great MBA Waves content. Today on episode 131, we are discussing career values and their importance for a great career. We're deep diving into why career values matter, values in careers, and of course, making the most of the MBA experience. I'm going to be your host today, Krithika Srinivasan, joined by my co-hosts, Bara and Eric. Hi, how are you doing?
Hey, guys.
Hi.
Hey, everyone.
And we have special guests today, our friends and colleagues, Andrea Sparrey and Amit Kapur from Sparrey Consulting, both Booth alums. A big welcome to you both, Andrea and Amit. Thanks for joining us.
Well, thanks for having us. It's so exciting to be here. And 131 episodes, guys. That's amazing.
That's an amazing achievement.
There's lots to say.
And we have spoken about everything under the sun, or everything related to business education. And so jumping right in, I always have felt that values are so like a touchy-feely topic for many because it could change so much. So can you just tell us about what are career values and why should someone care about it, especially with respect to the MBA experience? So maybe over to you first, Andrea, and then to Amit.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to jump in first and say, one of the things that people can value is money, right? That's not very touchy-feely. That's pretty substantial and real. In fact, we were just talking about it with some MBA alums this morning and the importance of proactively negotiating and navigating for yourself in your career. And compensation is one of those things that people can value. They can also value things like learning, right? And getting different experiences and gaining exposure to things that are going to help you answer questions like, is this the path for me over the longer term? Some people value things like alignment with passions. For some people, they were going to optimize career decisions around that. And it is so helpful to know what is important to you at a point in time, right? So what's important to me today, and I'm sure for you guys as well, might be wildly different than what was important to me 2 decades ago. But it is really, I think, critical to be honest and direct with yourself about what those things are at this point in time, and to then have some amazing conversations with people who are ahead of you in your career to understand how those might change. So that's why I'm such a nerd about it. It's definitely, Krithika, to your point, some of the things are definitely of the more touchy-feely nature, right? Some people really value work-life balance or work-life integration, or depending on the terminology. Some people like going to work where they're going to hug their colleague. Maybe that's a measure of success if you have that kind of relationship. You don't just have to be married to your colleagues to hug them, by the way. But it's, as we are. But it is, it's really important to identify what brings you satisfaction at work, because you're going to spend a lot of time there. Even if you manage and optimize for a career that gives you lots of time outside of work, you're still going to spend a lot of time doing that thing. And so being in a place where you thrive is such an important part of it.
Well, what we've found is that it's also there's always a good time to evaluate your values and your priorities, because this is really important when we're working with clients and deciding which schools should they apply to, which schools are going to be the right fits. Having people understand what their values are is really important for that fit. Obviously people look at rankings, they look at brand, and they make school choices based on that. What we found over the years is that probably more important than that is actually finding the right fit for you, where if you can find a school that is aligned with, how you work, how, your priorities, your values, you're much more likely to be successful, and the ceiling is going to be higher on your success than trying to find force yourself into a place where you're not maybe isn't as good a fit.
Guys, you bring up so many good points already. I just want to respond to some of the things you said. Every time I listen to you, Andrea or Amit, whether in person or online, you always get me thinking. And, speaking about values, I think, one of the things that we haven't touched upon yet is what people, I think, tend to value it the most, especially as we get older, is time. We realize how short life is, and time to spend with our family, time to just be alive, to do the things.
Especially after COVID, right?
Yeah, it was like a big reality check for the world. And you guys got into a couple of areas that made me think about like what workplaces think of in terms of compensation, right? There's financial, of course, but there's also recognition, there's job satisfaction, there's having impact, right? Relationship with your teammates, and also growth. So many really good things that I think tie into our world, all of us, because right, we're all in, higher education, career development kind of stuff. And, it's not always just about money, and it very much is a think about culture and values, which is something I end up speaking about early on with all of my clients in the whole MBA admissions process, right? Like identifying their individual values, going deep on that, and finding the schools that match culturally with those.
Yeah. Well, and Amit and I were just talking last night, actually, what is so interesting with you and Krithika and Bara is that you're all people who have experimented, right? And have tried different approaches to things, whether it's creating an entire program, reaching people in different ways. There's so many things. And could you imagine being in an environment where you're not able to experiment? I feel like, at least knowing just a little about you guys, I can imagine that would not be in an environment that would be a fun one to be in. But it's hard sometimes to put words to that until you've had a chance to talk with people about some of the things that they have enjoyed most in their workplaces, if that makes sense.
It's also hard to measure some of these things, right?
Absolutely.
Like you can measure money, right? You can measure time, but it's hard to measure passion or what it means to hug someone at work, right? Like you could probably say, well, I like hugging people more than I like doing this other thing.
Yeah.
But things are relative, and people, like you were saying, change over time. So you could project where you're going to be in 30 years potentially, but you might not know where you're going to be. So at what point does money take precedence? At what point does that thinking out of the box take preference?
Yeah. Well, and honestly, also brand, right? It's very easy to suggest that we should all optimize for passion and interest from a very early stage, but brand can open a lot of doors for people and create opportunities as well, right? That can be a really important part of things. Bara, you did bring up an important question though, and both Amit and I are Booth grads, so I would tell you could measure almost anything. Right. So
that's why we structured the tool the way we did.
Interesting.
Yeah. Well, yeah. From the
nothing less.
Well, but right. Like you can at the end of each week, sit down and take 2 minutes, right. And say this week, how aligned did I feel with my passions at work? If that's something that's important to you. And one data point doesn't do a lot, but as you guys have seen, like 131 episodes happened, right? And if you're doing it once a week, 52 data points are going to happen in a year. If you see trends where it's like hugely volatile and some weeks you're completely aligned with your passions and other weeks you're entirely not, that's very different than like a gentle slide over the course of that 52 weeks as well. And that's not to say that everything should be measured, but there are times where if you're doubting something that you've said is really important to you, it can be worth that 2-minute exercise at the end of a week to say, how did this actually go?
And that's part of the reason that we structured the tool we did the way we did, where we allow people to use it as much as they want over a period of time, because the answers sometimes change. They change week by week, month by month, year by year. And what we found is, the people we work with, the success isn't, a straight line from one point to another. It can be, jumping around a little bit, to your point of experimentation. Experimenting is actually really valuable, especially early in your career. Now, some of those experiments may not work out, but it's going to give you really valuable experiences, perspective, and you're going to be able to use that perspective to assess, what does this tell me about myself? Did I put myself in a situation that if I didn't like it, well, yeah, it's not great to go through, but that's really valuable perspective to then be able to document and say, I didn't like that. Here's what I didn't like about it. And that informs my next choice. And so I'm much more likely to make the right decision for the next choice that I have to make. And as we all know, success in life isn't about making big decisions correctly. It's about stringing together a whole bunch of little decisions correctly, about networking with the right people, and emphasizing relationships, emphasizing the things that you value in life.
Yeah, absolutely. You guys have been talking about this tool, and I want to hear a little bit more about it. So maybe I'll ask Andrea first.
Yeah.
Because I know you've been really working on this. I know a little bit more about you doing this than Amit. Maybe both of you have been 50-50. So actually, please tell us.
Yeah. Well, I was going to say, I'll jump in.
Yeah.
I will also credit Krithika with having provided us really useful feedback at one point on the tool as well, which we really appreciate. To give credit where credit's due, the tool actually was something that we developed, and I had started to develop actually when I first left consulting, shockingly almost 2 decades ago. Time moves really fast. There are a lot of values-based exercises that people do, but then they kind of go away, right? Like you do it, hey, here are the things I value, and then 3 months later, you're making a choice, and maybe you scratched out what those values are on paper, or you've got your own spreadsheet somewhere or something. I tend to think that if something is really important, you'll take the time to measure it. And so putting those values down and giving people a framework that offers a little bit more than just values, but also deal breakers, and to really challenge yourself to be honest as you're making career choices. There wasn't really anything like that at the time. And in fact, what we've seen is that it's very complementary to tools like Career Leader, which suggests certain paths. What this does is take it a step further to say, here are these live opportunities or projected opportunities. How do I value those things? And so it challenges you, and it provides some networking support and things like that to go through and ask. This is where, though, the where credit is due part is that Amit actually was the one who coded the very first version of this tool. He knew exactly nothing about coding when he started, and I think knows a little bit more than nothing about coding at this stage. But learned,
it was a little bit traumatic at the time, but
learned to manage some offshore resources and different things to develop the tool, because having something there that holds people accountable to what they've said is important to them is one of the most useful things we've seen as people are making career decisions and school decisions. And exploring, to me, that where this becomes so relevant in the MBA process is before you spend a lot of time and money on going through testing or going through applications or anything else, it's thinking about, do you actually want the things that are on the other side?
Yeah.
So for a lot of the clients, I'm sure that you guys meet and that we meet, they do. Like the things that they're looking for are the things that they'll get in school. But I so distinctly remember meeting this absolutely wonderful person who would have made a great candidate, awesome test scores, awesome grades. He wanted to be a school teacher and was totally convinced that going to HBS would give him credibility with high schoolers that he was going to teach into the future. And we had a long discussion about the other ways in which one could gain credibility with teenagers. There's lots of ways we're learning, having some teenagers. But going and investing 2 years in business school, if you're really, really convinced that the thing you want to do is be a public school teacher, probably not the best use of resources. And in fact, might set you into a position where financially you have an obligation that you can't really repay if you're going to be a school teacher for a period of time. So it's that's where that accountability piece is so helpful, to say, what am I saying I actually want? And are those things going to play out for me at business school?
When we use ProValues with our clients, one of the things we push them on is reminding them that, obviously a lot of people come into the MBA process, they've got their list of target schools. Hey, I want to go here. I want to go here. Variety of reasons for it. We early on, we try and nudge the idea that not getting into school is not the worst case scenario for most people. It's actually getting into a school that's the bad fit. Because and there have been circumstances we've worked with, exceptionally rare, but there have been people we've worked with where they haven't put the research in, or they've over-indexed on rankings, or over-indexed on what their friends and family tell them where they should be going, and they come out, they go, yeah, it was okay, it wasn't great, it was okay. And it's hard because they've invested so much money and so much opportunity cost in going. Where another path would be better. And that's one of the reasons that we use ProValues with our own clients, is to give them some structure around that, turning it from a gut feel and at least numbers on a page that they can then have a little bit more of structured conversation around.
Yeah. So is ProValues specifically for business school students, or would anyone use it?
No, the very first group that we tested it with actually was a group of students in a fashion program. And the reason that was so memorable is that, as you can imagine, there's some people who were in a fashion school whose family and friends were incredibly supportive of their pursuits. And then others who were in that program whose parents may have suggested that this was a fun thing for a point in time, but that they would grow up and get a real job. And so what I remember talking to people about as we introduced the tool to them in that scenario is to say, one of the cool things about it is that, let's imagine that my parents believed that I should be a lawyer. I can use this tool and this framework to say, let's test it out. How much do I want to be a lawyer? Maybe I'm going to surprise myself and realize, all of these values, these things I'm talking about, they might actually be fulfilled in this field. Or it actually won't fulfill any of the things that are important to me, but I can then say to someone, I've taken your suggestion, I've actually run it through and given it some due consideration, and it's not the right path for me. So that was the first group that we ever did the full exercise with. And it's been interesting to see how that group in particular could look at it to say, gosh, I joined this program because I have a creative mindset and I want to be designing and making clothes. But other people who went through that exercise realized, I like doing that, but I'm happy for that to be my interest. What I actually am interested in more is being able to represent other designers or other artists and getting their work into maybe major retailers, right? And so playing that role as a buyer or doing something else that they realized, because they were starting to go through the exercise and to say, well, what are the other options? And it gave them a framework in particular that they could go and ask people questions to say, Bara, what is it like to develop a test prep organization or to create these tools? What does your job actually even look like? And if I'm saying that A, B, and C are important to me, how does that fit with what you actually do day to day? And when you can go out and have those conversations, that's when you learn more about potential career paths that you might not even begin to imagine when you start going through a search or thinking about your future, because somebody else opens up other ideas and you can then go through and evaluate those ideas too.
It sounds like these values and really knowing yourself is super important when you're thinking about applying, right? Like you've said that clearly. So how does someone start with this? Because the application process winds up being during a particular point in time.
Yeah.
students need to apply. They need to know themselves. They need to have a game plan and know themselves well enough to, not write the same essay for each school, for example.
Yeah.
But to really understand their values and how to present themselves. So how do they begin capitalizing on this knowledge earlier?
That's a terrific question. And I think it can happen in a number of different ways. So it can start with the conversations that you're having as you're meeting people in different programs, right? And whether it's the tool that we use or lots of other values-based tools that are out there, to say, what are those things that I think are important to me, so that I can ask interesting questions when I'm talking with someone. So, if it's a candidate who is talking to somebody at INSEAD, for example, and they can go to them and talk about, gosh, I'm really valuing this, teamwork is really important to me. How does that actually happen in the program? Or I think I'm interested in this field that's going to unlock these values for me. Can you talk to me about someone, in your program who's pursued something like that? What does that look like? So it has, as people have gone through that experience, one of the things that I find is really helpful is the instance where they think that something is a fit and then they realize actually it's not. Maybe that school isn't as known for a certain path. And it came up one year, someone was talking about human capital as their path and wanting to do innovative things, building out a business related to human capital. There are, as you guys know, there are some schools that address that incredibly well and that do that in an entrepreneurial way. And there are other schools that may have a class or two, but it's really not their focus. And so getting people to do that exploration and see that connection then allows them to go back and say, well, how would I actually thrive in this place? Or would I actually thrive in this place? Can I imagine it? So that's one of the ways that we've seen it, for sure.
Even earlier in the process, one of the things that some of our clients struggle with is simply the idea of, why am I going to business school? Like, can I actually articulate that in a couple of sentences? And so a tool like this helps de-stress it. You put some time in, you provide your answers, but it gives you some clarity as to what you're looking for in the next stage. And if you value compensation, that's probably going to direct you to certain career paths. If you value other aspects, or you're more mission driven, or a little bit more even keeled and don't have strong priorities either way, that's also going to inform your path forward. This is, again, just providing data, providing perspective so that you know yourself better. You're able to articulate it a little bit more clearly. And that also helps in the work product that you're going to produce for the schools to get them excited to admit you.
So from what I'm hearing, you could use it at multiple stages in the process. So definitely for even like picking out the schools and even listing and prioritizing and ranking as per what matters to you, and definitely about career paths, potential career paths, and also as a tool for networking, because you could ask deeper questions. So, and I also see that, I read this recently and it has stuck with me, especially with respect to career paths, how it's important to have frameworks and not formulae. Right. And so I think this tool also provides that. So can you talk a little bit more about how someone can use the MBA program as such in order to identify and even strengthen their values for later on?
Yeah, I love that question, because that's one of the best things to me about school is the time that it gives people to think. And so much of it is being honest about what you actually enjoy, right? So it could be that you go to school thinking that traveling is going to open up a whole other world of exploration and something that's really important to you. Maybe it's actually the time that you spend exploring ideas with a colleague where you weren't even thinking about building a business, and then your roommate starts something and you're helping out, and then you realize, actually, I want to be there to support that more. And so that's why it's back to that idea of paying attention to what the things are that are actually driving a sense of enjoyment for you. Amit loves data, for example. There's nothing quite like tossing over a data set. And I love anecdotes, right? And the storytelling and the different components. Well, it's amazing to see those things, is seeing how the things that you value, and what I value about anecdotes is the human connection that comes from being able to see that. I think Amit loves unlocking unexpected surprises in data, right? And hey, we didn't think this was going to be the case, but gosh, it really is. And that helps people in different ways. And so it's paying attention to what it is that you actually love doing. I'm so curious. You guys have now done this for a while. What do you love about the podcast? I imagine, or about doing this? I imagine it's different for each of you, maybe.
We've definitely had a lot of conversations along the way. We're going on 3 years that Bara and I launched this.
Yeah.
I believe the very first episode was the first week of April. So we're almost 3 years. Krithika joined us roughly a year and a half ago, I think.
Yep.
So yeah, we've definitely had some huddle ups about where are we at with this? What does this bring us? Initially, actually, we started on a different platform. We started on Clubhouse back in the day. There were also a few other people involved. Peptia, there's a few others. But anyway, the idea initially was to put ourselves out there. We're all different stages in our respective businesses, but to have conversations with people, to grow our businesses, but also to learn things, right? We're constantly updated with new information.
This industry is always changing. You're right.
Right? Every time we host a school, we learn some of the latest and greatest, kind of like when we learn things from the summer with the schools, with AIGAC, but we also learn new perspectives, new techniques, new challenges. The sands are always shifting with testing, with rankings, with laws, with technology. Right. And I think you guys can kind of get all out I'm talking about. Changes with AI, especially changes in the United States last summer with the Supreme Court and admissions policies, and so on. So it's a constant refresher, keeps us on our toes. We have fun, we have camaraderie, and it's all those things at once for me. And I think I'll let Bara and Krithika chime in.
Well, I think there's been, I agree with that, Eric. It's super fun, right? And we get to see people that we want to meet, or people that we want to see, like you guys, and really talk shop when we don't ordinarily have the opportunity to. At conferences, it winds up being too harried, and we're focusing on other things. But I also love that, for me, the tests have changed so much this past year. GRE, the GMAT, the LSAT will be changing. The SAT is changing, or has changed. The ACT will change. So for me, it's been an incredible opportunity to talk to people who are at these places in the testing world, and see how that's really happening in the back, in the back end. So I really appreciate that. And I like projects. Projects more fun to me than process, ongoing. And so this feels more like every episode is a project. And how are we going to do it? And how are we going to do it better? How do we reach more people? So it's a puzzle too, right? How do you create something successful and stay up in the time? But one thing that we're thinking about doing is moving to a podcast, because we're a vidcast. So whoever is listening to it now might actually be listening to it on a podcast, because we can change.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, it's really easy to do it. You just have to do it.
Yeah.
So it's really fun to work with the technology, like Eric said, like the AI, and how do you adapt quickly to all these changes?
And for me, I would say that it's a reflection of how the admissions industry itself is evolving, and we're able to see it through the perspective of the applicant as well. And all the topics that we pick are something that applicants are curious about. And, especially as Bara said, the last couple years have been very crazy with all the
Yeah.
layoffs and so many things happening and so many changes, people going test optional suddenly and so on. And of course, these conversations,
Yeah.
which I think takes the cake.
Well, one of the things that we see with candidates over time, right? To your point about the environment's changing. Sometimes, just yesterday, I had someone asking about whether it was okay to change their job before they applied to an MBA if they're intending to apply this fall. And we went back to the root causes of why they wanted to make that change in the first place. And sometimes it is additional compensation in another role. Sometimes they're maybe a little burnt out from something that they've been doing. But one of the things, so the exercise itself gives people, for each of their values, it gives them relevant networking questions that they can ask. What it also does, though, is gives them relevant tips to say, if X is important to me and I am not getting that right now in my job, what are the things that I could do that would increase the likelihood that I'm satisfied on that dimension? And sometimes those things happen through work. Sometimes they happen outside of work. But it's even in the process saying, like, thinking about as you're going through the MBA application process, you're often still employed in a job day to day. And not everybody is really super thrilled about the job that they're employed in day to day. And so this becomes a challenge to them to say, hey, in this work together, let's add value before you even apply to school. Let's actually get you happier in your job day to day first. And you can still apply, but or in the instance that you're absolutely miserable in your job, let's validate that and let's help you to make a change before you apply so that you're not applying from a place of, frankly, not having the energy because you're kind of down about your job.
Yeah, it's a more informed change. And kind of building on that point, it's because the tool is really crafted around your values as an individual. You're the one providing the inputs, you're the one providing the perspective. It's a way of staying grounded even during school. One of the challenges from the people we work with who are in school, it's really hard to stay grounded because you're surrounded by people who maybe 40% of them are going to investment banking presentations and another 40 are going to consulting. And then there are other 20 are doing a variety of things, or maybe everybody's going to tech, or whatever. It's really hard when you're in that environment not to just like, oh, I should follow the herd. I'm missing out on this. I'm missing out on that. And it's important to find ways, whether it's ProValues, whether it's friends and family, whether it's support network. In many cases with our clients, it's us. It's finding ways to stay grounded so that you're finding the answer that is right for you, because there is no perfect answer for everybody.
No.
It's really, business school is about finding your own path. And it's not following the herd because you don't know where the herd is going.
Yeah, even if your path goes through one of those conventional fields, right? Like, there's lots of times when the conventional choice might be absolutely the right choice for you, but it's different to choose it instead of just like, my roommate's going to this thing, I'm going to go because I'm not sure what else to do right now.
Yeah.
The FOMO kills.
Yeah, we've had people where, just building on Andrea's point, that they'll make a choice to go into a high compensation career saying, hey, early on in my career, I know I'm probably going to value family and value time a little bit more. I actually want to prioritize compensation earlier in my career. That will give me the freedom to be able to do that. Yeah. That's really important. And so again, it's just about learning about yourself, being able to make those choices, recognizing those values are going to change, and that's okay. But to be able to then make those choices at those various stages to optimize your happiness longer run.
Amit, like bringing you back to that, how at different stages in your career and your life, different values, rise to be more important than others. I feel like a tool like what you guys are offering is something that'd be really useful, even at a younger level, like junior high, high school level. Get kids thinking early about these things and making that a priority. To do a check-in, maybe at least once a year, to see where am I at, what's important at this stage in my life. But coming back to academia, last fall I got to visit quite a few in the summer as well. Great business schools. I was on campus at LBS. I was at Bocconi, and I was really excited to see how the hard skills are taught through so many ways. Of course, classes, but also case competitions, clubs, simulations. So, how do MBA programs end up striking the balance of teaching all those technical hard skills along with cultivating ethical values?
Well, there's so many creative ways in which programs are trying to do that, both through formal programming and through those times that people have free time to explore the things that they want, and that's why it's so important to make that time to figure out what it is that you want to build and grow as you're doing that. Mm-hmm. I think what's been interesting, because we've taken this tool to a number of different business school programs lately, and it is amazing honestly the freedom that comes from a more challenging job search environment. And when we start presentations and talk about that with people, you can sort of see the shaking of the head and like freedom of a challenging job environment. Are you kidding me? Like, I would very much prefer to be employed right now. But what has happened is that there's been a premium where certain folks who are entirely sure about their path, or who have been able to interview successfully, maybe for one of a very few conventional spots in a certain path, those folks have found what it is that they wanted, and they put in the time to do it. But sometimes not having an opportunity through that conventional path means that you get out and you talk to more people. Maybe you're willing to try an internship that is not what you were thinking. I remember someone years ago during the last downturn, which feels like it was really years ago, was thinking that they were going to do consulting, and they ended up working with a special internal innovations team at IBM, and absolutely freaking loved it, and realized they wanted to be doing the things that were totally cutting edge. She was working on AI in 2009, for example, and went back to business school, and in her second year ended up spending time on that business school's innovation council. They were rethinking, gosh, this makes me feel old, but they were rethinking business school for 2025, right? And thinking about from 2010 to 2025, what was going to change about business education. And because she had had this internship experience, which she would not have had if she had been successful conventionally, she actually put her hand up and maybe did a little screaming and shouting too to get the opportunity, but she ended up sitting on that board. Well, fast forward 15 years later, she's still working with and collaborating with some of the people who are on the sort of core leadership coaching team at that business school. So I think that like the necessity of, or I guess the opportunity that necessity creates sometimes is really, really powerful for creating some of those skills.
That's part of the reason why when we designed the tool, we built in that idea of deal breakers. It's not just putting in your values, it's also identifying the things where it's like, this line I am not going to cross. An extreme example, I'm not going to kill anybody to succeed at my job. And so
not this week.
Yeah. But it's obviously not rarely that extreme, but there are, when people are using the tool and evaluating, it is helpful for them to know, it's always refreshing when we talk to people who are doing MBA applications saying there's a certain geography I'm just not interested in. I was talking with a prospective client a few days ago where they were looking at schools on the East Coast of the U.S., West Coast U.S., but not the Midwest. Because I don't care how high ranked they are. I just don't want to live in those cities. Okay.
And likewise, I was going to say same day, opposite scenario, right? Where it's I will only go to school in the Midwest. I've spent time in a lot of different places. I know where I need to be. I think, but one of the things that it does in particular is challenge people to think about things like minimums too. where it's very easy to say, follow your passion, do this thing, but maybe you need enough compensation to pay off your student loans or to rent an apartment or other things.
New York, yeah, exactly.
Yeah, where it's being honest with yourself about what that looks like as well.
Andrea, can you take us through what is the process like with ProValues, like some of the steps, how do people get matched to what they want and so on?
Yeah. So it starts at the beginning with a whole series of values, I think over 3 different categories. So it's the nature of the work that you do, the environment in which you do it, and then the rewards that you get. So within those 3 categories, there are 57 or 59 different values. And what we do at the start is encourage people just to explore and to think about each of those values, and on giving them a very short period of time, how would you rate this value and its importance to you, sort of 0 to 4 stars or whatever. What the intent is to say, you can't value everything, but we can put a lot of things in front of you to give you an initial read. It narrows it down then from your first choices and has you allocate points to those values. Where that becomes helpful, it gives you that initial framework, and then you're going into it to look at as a way to test yourself. You're going through some of the past roles that you've done and evaluating those roles on those different values. So if I'm looking at it saying, hey, gosh, of all the jobs that I've ever done, the one that ranks the highest for me is being a cashier at a drugstore, which is something I did a long time ago. If that rates the highest and it kind of holds true to how I felt about the job, great. If I'm testing a couple of my old jobs and it's not holding up with how I would think about them with the benefit of hindsight, then it encourages me to go back and tweak my values before I do a lot more. But the real crux of it comes when you're tossing in future opportunities. And that can be either as an industry overall. So those things can come from a lot of the other diagnostics that people are encouraged to do at school. Or it can be a specific role or job, because as you know, doing consulting at Accenture versus McKinsey versus Bain versus, some other niche firm maybe that's focused on the environment, they're all strategy consulting jobs, but they're actually quite different, either in what you're getting from that job. So compensation isn't just money. It's learning experiences, it's growth. There's a whole variety of things, but the environment in which you're doing them might be different. Even the nature of the work itself could be quite different. So it's going through and evaluating those opportunities. When you're doing that, there are often, if it's a future looking thing, there may be lots of things you don't know really how to assess it yet. And so there's a flag option in the exercise to say, hey, this is something I need to come back to if I'm going to really thoroughly assess it. That becomes a core part of the networking component, where it's giving you this list of networking questions that says, hey, if you're meeting people at this job, here are some things to talk with them about. So instead of the, hey, what do you do at BCG? It's the, I'd love to hear about how teams interact at BCG. When you're working on a project, how does that actually play out? Or how early in your career are you building expertise at BCG versus Bain or McKinsey or something else? How would I be developing expertise? What opportunities are there, for me to do that? Or if you're someone who loves exploring, what is this actually like? How much flexibility do I have to try out different things? So the exercise starts from that initial evaluation of values for yourself that become the framework, and then a lot of testing of different ideas along the way.
So there are a lot of insights to be gained. Like in Andrea's case, one of her early roles was as a cashier at a drugstore. But what she learned out of that, looking back, is she really likes people, Well, that shaped her choice of going to Bain versus some of the other consulting firms that she was considering, and shapes the way she's built the firm, is revolving around people. So there's so many different insights that you can learn about yourself using the tool, having that structure that are going to pay off in a variety of different ways. That's why we're excited for all the different use cases that we're seeing and continuing to learn every day.
So we're kind of winding down on the show. Thank you for these comments. I want to just ask you before we wrap up, are there any other final suggestions you guys have or tips, to share to help applicants for MBA or even masters or other programs to leverage their application journey to raise their self-awareness during the process?
We're actually doing some research right now that I'm really excited about, and we'll see how it plays out over the next few months. But as we've been doing hosting some presentations and sharing more of the content of the tool, one of the things that has come up as we have presented to different groups are the values that we are taught should be important to us. That's particularly true for women. When we've been presenting to groups of women where, Bara and Krithika, I'm not sure if you guys have had this experience, but teamwork is one of the things that I've often heard that women are supposed to value. Work-life balance is something that women are supposed to value, certainly more than men. I think for the men on this call, I bet you value work-life balance just the same way that a lot of other women might. Likewise, there are a lot of women who value being positioned as an expert, or who value a compensation path that will create opportunity for themselves or their family. So one of the things that we're exploring as we talk with people is, what did you value when you were graduating from school? And if you could look back, what are the things that you would encourage yourself to value in different ways? And I think we've got some hypotheses about where that might go, but I'm really curious to see how that research plays out, because I think it might help to inform some of the biases that we all bring to evaluating different things, including ourselves, and might challenge us to think in a bit of a different way about what those values might be or might mean.
Yeah, just building on that, it's really making sure that this process is built around your needs. Everybody is an individual. We've worked with thousands of clients over the years. Everybody is individual. There's no cookie cutter way of approaching this process. Engage with support, listen to more of these podcasts, you sort of gather as much information. But as you digest it, make sure that you're staying true to who you are and what your priorities, what your values are, because that's what's going to drive your success, not following what you think somebody else thinks you should do or wants you to do. This is about you.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, as you guys are talking with different schools and stuff like that, it's one of the things that I've seen as schools are communicating their value to candidates, that so often it's understanding how that person can realize more of themselves in that place maybe than somewhere else.
Yeah.
Where it's understanding what those different opportunities are that I think becomes really valuable. And that's why it's so cool that you guys are talking to so many different programs and being able to share what they do, because each one of them does very different things. And I'm sure, all of you have been in those conversations with folks that say, so excited about schools A, B, and C, but not really being able to articulate why. And then when you introduce I keep thinking back to UT Austin, for example, was the first business school where women earned more money than men in their graduating class. This was several years ago. And their average income for women was higher than for their male counterparts. And part of it had to do with career choices and paths people were going down. But there was also extensive programming that supported the women who were making some of those choices. So negotiations workshops, and a variety of different things. And being able to say to someone, if you are interested in these sorts of paths and you think you would benefit a lot from being challenged to represent yourself in a different way, gosh, here's some amazing things that might make this program better for you than any other program that's out there, right? And that's where it becomes so interesting to see that alignment and to be able to articulate that alignment from different programs to different candidates.
I want to piggyback on something Eric also said, which is that all of these things that we're talking about are important for really everybody who's going to be part of the workforce in any way, which is most people.
Yeah.
Because, you know, with your cashier example, like if someone's a cashier and they really just enjoy people, but they don't recognize they can do other things, rather than just working at a cash register, then if they're not given the opportunity to think about it, they're going to just say, well, I do have job satisfaction, and what else do I really need to do? Because I'm good where I'm at. And if they're not really thinking through or given tools or an opportunity to gain that self-awareness, it's not really just at all for business school applicants. It's really for all of us as we think about what we enjoy and what we want to get out of life. I mean, and I think that seeing a career development person is just a really valuable step in general, tools or no tools. I saw one like 30 years ago, and I still have the notes in my file cabinet, and I go back to them sometimes to see like what it said. And I remember one of them said that being a rabbi or a judge, like those were two of the things that were on there. And I'm like, I am ordained. I am doing some of that work. I am working on a council. Like, I'm not a judge, but it was just interesting to see that these threads over time really, they keep showing up and emerging, and some take more precedence at a certain point, and then they recede. So it's just so valuable for our listeners who aren't even yet applying, but just starting to think about applying. This is such a valuable tool to figure out, because I mean, like you said, not everyone needs to go to business school.
Exactly.
It's great if that's the path that's going to get you to where you need to go, but it's
lots of successful people do not have an MBA. So.
Well, and this is going back to the credit piece. One of the things that Krithika encouraged me to consider a year ago that's certainly on the radar, and that our data guru / junkie, depending on the day, might be pursuing is, what do other people do who share your values, right? Then Krithika, you really challenged me to think about this, which was, what's the predictive component? And when we've got 100,000 users of the tool, the predictive component will be far more successful than it is with 10,000 users of the tool. But being able to say, gosh, here's someone who shares your values profile and something that they do. Bara, to your point, someone who's a great cashier could also be a very good mediator. They might be really good in real estate. Like, there's so many different things that are out there. And just having those suggestions to say what you do today might be what you do for the rest of your life, or it might be part of it, or maybe you do something that's totally different, but that aligns even more with those values.
And then as you grow and gain more perspective, you have more leadership, you're responsible for teams, you can start to build teams around those values that you want to craft yourself, whether they're aligned with the organization or aligned with your own personal values. We're having people use it as a recruiting tool. To say, hey, I'm going to use it to screen and to really get to know people on a different level so that I can make some choices as to, people who are aligned with the mission of my team.
Yeah, I'm a huge fan of LinkedIn. We've talked about LinkedIn a couple of different episodes on MBA Waves, and I really like the different interest sections on the bottom. Like, you have schools and groups and companies and so on. I find myself encouraging my friends' kids, they're only in high school, to like have an account already and to start getting
Absolutely.
A lot of people make the mistake of only following the schools that they went to, and I don't really know why, but follow any schools that you're even just curious about. Like, maybe you have no Harvard, but I think everyone is in agreement that they're producing they're thought leaders. You can learn a lot.
Yeah.
And especially any schools you're considering applying to. It's just the way to stay on top of the latest and greatest, right?
Yeah.
But also the personal interest section of groups.
Yeah.
Things with interests. I mean, say, for example, there's one called French Wine Lovers that I'm a part of. Big surprise.
I find that shocking.
There's a few reasons I moved to Paris. But in any case, getting to know people that share that interest of mine and seeing what they do for a living. It's like, oh, that's an interesting career path, right? Especially if you're a person you don't necessarily have on your radar the various things you could do in life. Like if I had known when I was 16 what an urban planner was, I probably would have studied that. So I just love trying to figure out that solving that problem of city streets and whatever, how to make things work better. But yeah, that's why I really like LinkedIn as far as exploring and learning.
Yep.
And the earlier you learn to have those conversations with people to figure out more of that, I think the better off you are. Eric, I'm going to have you encourage our kids to set up a LinkedIn account because they will never listen to their parents. That's a thing.
Yeah.
But it's amazing, right? What it unlocks when you're able to explore what is actually out there. For sure.
And it's never too early to start, kind of building on Bara's earlier point of explore. This is about opening up options. Just because you start liking some schools or go to a webinar or listen to this podcast doesn't mean you have to apply to an MBA, but you're much better positioned to do so if you listen to this podcast or you go visit some schools or you engage people around you to ask questions about what Wharton is like or what Haas is like at UCLA and all these multitude of great schools out there.
Yeah, absolutely. You're just learning things. You're opening up options. You're pathways and making connections. So that never is a bad thing.
Yeah. Guys, thank you.
Gosh, I'm getting the rap today. As the host, I'm supposed to say time up, time out. But I'm let's keep going. It's so good.
Well, I was going to say thank you so much for having us. And
thank you so much.
And we both talk a lot, because we get really excited about things, but we're just so, again, congratulations on 131. And we're so excited to see so many more episodes. And thank you for what you guys are doing for so many different candidates and helping them to learn. It's amazing.
Oh,
Thanks so much, Andrea. And, I was just thinking two things that I just read it today, saying that you're going to have about 5 to 6 careers or even 7 careers on an average.
Yep.
So we have a choice of trying everything out, over the course of time. And thanks for, from what I'm comparing it to the lovely sorting hat that you have created, which would help people understand more about themselves and how their values will drive those careers. But that's all the time that we have today. I'm going to thank you and Amit for joining us today and the amazing insights and the wonderful conversation. And thanks so much for all the guests in the audience. MBA hopefuls, if you liked today's episode, please give us a little thumbs up and subscribe to the YouTube channel. For full access of upcoming and past episodes, head over to mbawaves.com.